Welcome to How Not to DM. I'm your host, Derek. Thanks for joining me on my quest to interview the very best dungeon masters on this plane of existence.
I got into tabletop role-playing games because I had been playing a lot of board games by myself. There was like a portion in time. I love games. I love all types of games. I've been playing games for as long as I can remember as a kid, especially because I'm a twin brother. So I have a twin brother, and you always have someone to play with. You always want to beat that person. My brother, Tyler, who I always wanted to dominate, whether it was basketball or frisbee or board games or Super Smash Brothers. There's always something that I could play with him and beat him at. But that kind of faded away after college, especially like I don't know when I was going to college in 2009, 2010. Like there was definitely like Halo 3 and like Mario 64, but like after that, I think like when you left college, it was almost like I got to put my childish things aside and be an adult. And I think that changed a lot recently, especially with the Nintendo Switch and more spaces where adults can like game and participate in gaming. And I think that also the Dungeons and Dragons boom contributed to that as well. So I
For
was playing
sure.
a lot of board games by myself. I played this game called Sentinels on the Multiverse. Have you heard of that? So the thing is, usually you play for like 3 people, right? But what I was doing, I was playing 3 different decks at the same time against a
Yeah.
villain deck and an environment deck that I was running myself. And I bought all the expansions and like the individual decks that I would just buy on Amazon for like $9. I would throw into my cart. And then of course, like I started listening to actual play shows. I saw it on Community, which was great. And I was listening to the Adventure Zone, and I'm like, oh, I get this. This is something that I could really do. I bought the DM's guide and the player's guide. I read it all. I played one game, and then no one wanted to play with me. And then eventually I had to DM. There was a game that I was starting with my friends where I was like, oh, I'm going to be this player. It's going to be great. And then and then the DM dropped out. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be a player. So I'm like, I guess I'm doing it. And here's the thing. In the second session that I ran for this campaign, which I threw together the like 15 minutes before, I made that player cry emotionally from the emotional catharsis she dealt with during the game. So that's where it happened. And then the actual play boom. I was working in I was trying to get into podcasting. I was working at a bunch of jobs that were like creative adjacent. And that's where I met the people who I would start joining the party with, which became the backbone of multitude of my full-time job.
Yeah. You built yourself a job. That's incredible.
The thing is, I really need to emphasize this. Like the stuff that we did on Join the Party, all of the tenets of that were like became how we make every single podcast on Multitude. Like I know it's an actual play show and it's fiction and it has a lot of sound design and everything, but like the tenets of like making the show good from the beginning, investing in making it understandable for the audience, making it sound good from the beginning, and just like getting ready to show something with like your arms open and then allowing people to run into your arms. Like that's every single type of show that we do now. Is kind of based on that, and that's from making an actual play show starting in 2017.
That's good because I find that trying to recommend a show to somebody else can be very hard unless you know how to pitch it to them.
Yeah.
Like my wife has tried to get me to listen to some things here and there, and it's always like you go and listen to one episode yourself, but you're like, I don't know what's going on, or I don't really understand the premise here,
Yeah.
and you lose interest so fast. And so like being able to distill down to like very simple terms exactly what it is and exactly what everyone's going to experience, and like explaining that up front just makes it that much easier for people to find exactly what they're looking for. So yeah,
Can I
it's
tell
funny
you,
how
as someone who works in podcasting professionally, and that includes you, because we're on this show and you have this show, right? What you can just do is being like, when it comes around, being like, oh, you like podcasts? Tell me about them. You can just take their phone and just subscribe them to podcasts. I was just at a wedding and I did that to like my high school friends, and I'm like, just give me your phone,
Yeah.
I'll just do it. So it's like they're on the flip side, podcast, just you could just put it on someone. Be like, no, 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 no. You'll like the show. You'll like it.
It's true. It's true. I guess it's just some people are harder to sell than others. Like me,
Yeah.
I've listened to dozens and dozens of podcasts because I like them and I'll try anything, because I've got the time while I'm working or whatever. And then there's other people who are just like, I don't want to listen to a podcast. And those folks, I guess we just don't care about anyway. So
The thing about podcasts, though, is like we need people like you. And like Derek, you are propping up the entire industry, first of all.
I don't
Thank
know
God.
about that.
Thank God. Really. I'll show you my pocket cast. I've listened to so many podcasts, so many hours. And like, but you need those people to be excited and into it.
Mm,
Because again, podcasting as a form is very hard to get into, especially as opposed to all the other ways that we do digital, whatever, right?
true.
YouTube, streaming, uh, those are the ones that are coming off my head, but like I guess a
Those are
smaller
the big ones.
other smaller
Yeah.
content. It just takes so many clicks to get into a podcast. Like, think about it. If I recommended a show to you, I'm like, hey, Derek, there's a show where um there's a show where someone's dad killed all these people and now they have a rewatch podcast about all of the news that they reported on. It's called My Dad the Murderer, the Rewatch Podcast. You would need to do like 5 clicks of your phone, even if I sent you a link, to get to that podcast. You would have, especially if I send it to you over the computer, and then you got to make sure it's on your phone, and then you got to click it, and then you got to subscribe, and then you have to download. But the thing is, people are so sticky. Podcast listeners, especially podcast super listeners like you, are so good at being fans that it's like it kind of props up the whole thing. I say this all the time. One podcast download is equal to like 50, 70, 100 YouTube views.
As far as like ad revenue and that kind of thing, or
I think in all
um,
ways, in terms of
right.
like, in terms of ad revenue for sure, and how that
Mhm.
converts, and how sell you Casper mattresses and Hello Fresh boxes, but also like devotion, likelihood for Patreon, likelihood that they're going to recommend the show to someone else. Talking, maybe they don't talk to you that much because podcast listeners also like being in their own head and maybe
I
whatever.
know.
Like,
I
but
know.
still, I mean, they're really in terms of quality, I guess, like the quality of this singular unit, the singular currency. It's probably like the most valuable thing out there.
You mentioned you kind of like had to start running games out of necessity. You're like, okay, if I'm gonna play,
Mm.
then I have to be the person running the show here. So, what were the first sessions like? Was it completely homebrew, or were you running something pre-written? And then kind of how did that first game end up going? Did you play it all the way through to the end you were hoping for?
Yeah, it was always completely homebrew. I never played anything out of a book. I think I didn't really understand what that was at the time. I had a vague idea that the first few sessions of the Adventure Zone were the Minds of Fandelver, like the first thing that came out for 5th edition. But I didn't.
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, what it is that you make up a thing and then your friends play it and there you go. So I guess I never even knew that I was doing it. I certainly had a lot of tension of like making things too hard and too easy, and like when
Yes.
my players would kind of like come up with something I didn't anticipate. Though from the beginning I kind of understood what I wanted to do. There was just like I kind of understood that this was like a session of time where we were going to play and have fun and just game in all sense of the word, right? I still do something from those first few sessions that I still remember I love doing now, which is where I insert a game inside of a game where like just rolling dice is not enough for us to have this game. So what I did was we came to a maze and I had everyone roll survival checks. And depending on how well they did, I handed out a literal maze to them, like what's something that I printed. And if you rolled really well, I gave you like a child's maze. Like it was like a
Right.
ladybug with like 2 turns in it. And if you rolled like
Yeah.
a 5, then I gave you like a Mensa maze for like aging seniors who have an IQ of 90 of like a cajillion, right? I couldn't remember what a good IQ was, so I backed away from it. I backed away from knowing because I'm saying the number. And then I'm like, okay, you have 1 minute, go. And then if you finished the maze, you got out of the maze. And if you didn't, your character was still stuck inside the maze, and then you had to figure it out. And I just thought that that was a more fun way. And I understand now, like, the game mechanic of Dungeons and Dragons cannot do everything. So, well, good job me. But at the time, I was just like, oh, whatever. Yeah, it's the game time. It's the game session. So I guess that's what I didn't understand. Like when we were first doing tests for Join the Party, my players really were messing with me. Messed with me a lot. And I'm like, why? Why are you I came up with something for you to have fun with. Why are you a changeling who keeps changing forms and then went invisible? Like, why are you messing with me? And it made me very upset, and I didn't understand what was happening at the time. And then I'm like, oh, it's because they're players, and also they were being jerks. They were definitely being jerks. But like I didn't understand like that was what you did for your DM, you know?
Yeah, the first time it happens, it's always like, wait, like what? Like I spent so long on this. I was just listening to your interview with Brennan Lee Mulligan on the Adventuring Academy because I
Yeah.
like to do a little research, right? Try to ask you some new questions. You were talking to him about like that the analogy of like making your friends dinner and then you invite them over and they all like focus on the dish that you spent no time on, and that's exactly what this is reminding me of. Like,
In so many
yeah.
ways also, but, like, imagine your friends came over and was like, "Hey, what if I took your turkey, that you made, and then I put it in my butt?" And then everyone laughed. You're like, "Why
Right.
would you do that? Why?"
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a specific play style. I feel like there's groups out there who love to do it and groups out there who would prefer not to. It's not like hard and fast. Like you're gonna get groups who are very serious who still like try to pull a fast one on you every once in a
Right.
while. So yeah, it's how
Yeah.
it is. In the early days or, up until your most recent campaigns, can you think of any examples of how not to DM? Any thing that you've done that really, really was not a great choice in the moment and you wish you could take it back or you learned a valuable lesson from it?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I think the thing that bothered me the most in my early days was, like, at one point my players didn't like an essential NPC and then like
Oh.
got into a fight with him, and then one of my players crit really hard on that NPC who is like integral to everything, and I'm like, what? Why? How did this happen? How did this get to a point where this happened? And I think looking back on it, I did so many things wrong. The first thing was that I was visibly upset. I think the thing that you realize as
Show no weakness.
no, not even that. It's like, so I see DMing similar to like my experience as a camp counselor,
Mm,
as a high school English teacher, or even like when like you throw a party for one of your friends, like when my friends threw my bachelor party, right? Where it's like, if you show that something's going wrong, everyone's like, "Uh-oh, this isn't fun anymore. Uh-oh, 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 uh-oh." And I think this was heightened by the fact that it was on microphone, right?
mm.
And and then I was like, "Oh my god, now it's being recorded and now someone's gonna have to listen back to it." Like, oh my god. So first thing was I was visibly shaken, and I think just like it really ruined the vibe. The second thing is what I could have done is like I should have anticipated this happening because like I was being a butthole. The NPC didn't like the players because they were like ragamuffins, and he was like the boyfriend of the prince, right? And was also like
Mm.
powerful in his own right. And then the third thing I could have done was just make him super powerful. It shouldn't have mattered if he got crit on, because then like, well, then this guy had like a ton of hit points, but I must have assigned him like 14. And I think that just like I really didn't set anyone up for success. Neither me, nor my players, nor the story. And I think it just made everyone upset. And of course, what did I do? I took away a crit from someone. 5% chance. Like that's gonna happen. And I just didn't know what to do. So it kind of just it all just it got hard to comprehend. And then like the thing that I didn't then learn, the last thing that I learned was like I could have just stopped and took a second and then be like, I'm unprepared. Can we like retake this? Because it's a fiction show. Ultimately,
True.
I don't think anyone's losing something. We eventually did take a break and we talked about it and we resolved it, but I think that it was out of like me being upset and like everyone that getting kind of bummed out and upset about this really this tough situation. Like I just had I didn't know this was like probably it must have been within the first 10 sessions, if not session 5. Like, I just didn't know what to do. So, it was a lot of just inexperience. And I think now, even now, I say this now, like, all the kids are dressed so great and, like, have style TikToks and style Tumblrs and everything. I'm like, I didn't know. I didn't know you could have, like, a normal conversation with a person. But I feel like that would come up so much. Yeah, you read horror stories like that, but I feel like people know it's like, "Hey, if you have a problem, stop and say, 'Let's talk about it,' because no one cares." Like, no one's going to Brennan Lee Mulligan isn't going to break your window, roll in, and give you a fine for bad DMing. Like, that 1, that's not gonna
I
happen,
kind of
but
wish he
2,
would, to be honest. That'd
he's
be fun,
busy.
but
He's
yeah, he's
very
busy.
busy. But even then, like, that's no one's holding you to any sort of standard when the entire point of what you're doing is to have fun.
Most groups are going to be understanding of this and be like, yes, like
Yeah,
if you're uncomfortable, let's talk about it. Let's take a beat. Let's figure this out. Instead of like, no, I want you to keep the game going, and because otherwise my immersion's broken. Like, I don't know.
exactly.
It's a selfish person who would say that, right?
Yeah,
So,
what does good mean? What a good means emotionally available. An
right.
emotionally available group, yeah.
Yes. All right. How about good moments from your games? Really funny memories or emotional or meaningful. You mentioned earlier, you made a person cry. That sounds like a good one.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got anything for us about good times from your games you want to share?
Yeah, here's the reveal. That player is Julia Schifini, who is in my who's in Join the Party. So I always know that I'm doing a good job if I make Julia emote at me in some sort of way. I think if I could just give like a really quick, because players have a responsibility too. As a player, it is your much like a crowd at a comedy show or at the theater. It is your responsibility to listen intently and emote loudly when something happens so that the people know they're doing a good job. And I think that that's the thing that I don't know if, yes, like personal and introspection, artistic reflection, creative, blah, blah, blah. Because that really is how I see DMing, GMing. It's an
Yeah,
extension of my creative work and trying to like be mindful and blah 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 all about that stuff, blah blah blah. I did slam poetry for a while. I can't help it. This
yeah,
the stuff that comes out. But I think it's like I don't know if I do a good job unless my players are hooting and hollering. I really don't. And you just need that. So yeah, the best times I think is when like my players yell at me, when my players gasp or laugh, and I'm just like, good, okay, good. This connected with you, and therefore I think it's going to connect with the audience at large.
if getting a text message after the session that says thank you, always nice. But like in the moment, you're right. Like knowing whether or not you're doing a good job is very very dependent on the feedback you're getting, auditory or visual or whatever. So yeah, the audible gasp, like you said, like that's one of my favorites. If I get a gasp, I know I did good.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's always fun. All right. You mentioned earlier that kind of early days, it was really hard for you to deal with like your players throwing crazy wrenches in your plans. Do you feel like you got more flexible after that? And do you have an example of like a really big time where they just totally destroyed everything you worked so hard for and you had to think quickly on your feet to make it work?
Can I mean, I could say something that's a little bit sidestepping this. I'll answer the
Sure.
question, but I think my example is sidestepping this a little bit.
Okay.
Honestly, it got to a point where I stopped, like, planning everything so much because that's just, like, I can never think about if I want my players to be creative, I should not figure out what's going to happen next without getting their input. So it was a lot of, like
Yeah.
my notes became much more sketches at large of, like, okay, these are the people, this is what they're doing. If y There's something that from, Monster of the Week that really helped. We ran a Monster of the Week campaign. It was like a
Hmm.
mini campaign, in between 2 and 3, and something that they make you do as to like understand the threat of Monster of the Week. It's a player powered by the Apocalypse game, one of those games with like moves and two d6s. But of course, the whole thing is like an episode of Scooby Doo or the X Files or Gravity Falls. So you have to make a monster, but there is a stat block, but it's not the same because like the monster and the stuff the monster does, or the phenomena as it is that like what if no one intervened, what would happen? And that has really helped like all of my GMing in general. Like I was
Mm.
doing this a lot in campaign 2, especially because we were doing like a superhero game, like more like a Daredevil city level superhero game. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what's happening somewhere else if they don't intervene. And I think that that will help you move forward, like plan less, like plan the stuff that would happen if the players don't intervene because you have control all over that. But it's like, but if they do intervene, you have to follow what they do and say. Like you need to, if you had a big fight and they blow it up early, well, they got the drop on the thing, so that's what happens, right? So I think like just making sure that it's in reality is helpful, and then your notes, and then you'll plan so much less time on things that will never happen, and you can spend more time like writing world building games, becoming a game designer, working on your voices, sketching out your NPCs better. Like that's the stuff that really makes things pop, I think. 'Cause
Mm.
again, it's about if you want those gasps, you got to work on the popping stuff on top of your foundation. And if you
Yeah.
let the foundation like the players are supposed to dictate the plot and the foundation. In terms of your actual question, things where I dealt with what was going on. I wasn't really prepared when one of our players stepped away in campaign 1. It's still an episode where people hit me up every time and are like, "Oh my god, like I can't believe this. I'm so sad." And like the story I wanted to tell just was gone. I think that we also let it hang on for too long, having this player like who was dealing with a lot of stuff, and also, it was hard to like work with them as they were dealing. So it's like I wish we had come to an agreement to have them leave sooner. So maybe we could have figured something out. But we were like, I guess 2/3 of the way through the game, and then it felt like almost, not actually because we had a lot of fun on the way there, but it's like it just felt like we were trudging towards the end and just trying to finish. And I think that was something that, like, the story didn't deserve. I mean, the characters were great, and I had a lot of fun at the end, but, yeah, I wish that we had, something they had thrown in. It's almost like, you gotta just finish it and then move on. And I wish we had dealt with it sooner.
It's something I feel like especially casual groups will have to deal with a lot more often because people are stepping away all the time, and so yeah, it's definitely something to think about and to try to handle, um, especially when you can kind of see inevitably where it's going to end up. So yeah.
Yeah, it's what you said about like, we were making a joke about a good group, but like a good group is just a group of emotionally available friends. And like if someone needs to step away for work reasons, or you got to like break up with someone, or your real life has intersected with this, like just do it. Don't let them hang on. Like the gaming session is not higher than your relationships. It is a outgrowth. It is an extension of your relationship. So like you got to honor the relationship, and then just be like, yeah, you guys broke up, so one of you can't play with us anymore. Like it's just, I think it has to come down to that, and you got to be clear with each other about what is best for fun while people's lives are going on.
And I feel like it's happened a few times, but there's plenty of folks who I don't play with anymore who are still my friends, and I feel like I don't know. I've heard other people express the same sentiment, like you were saying. Relationships are probably more important than the game, and so yeah, we always keep that in mind. So, do you have any homebrew rules or systems or anything like that that you like to bolt on to games you're running? Whether it be a D&D game or any other kind of game that you feel like make it more fun and more engaging, anything like that?
Well, Derek, if you want to go to the Join the Party merch store at
Oh,
jointhepartypod.com/merch, you could purchase some of the game design that I facilitated as a part of Join the Party, and also being a game designer who works within actual play and figuring that stuff out. I'm joking, but I'm also not joking. It's a lot of fun.
no.
Recently, I came up with a game mechanic where the mechanic is just rock, paper, scissors. I think works super well for like a success, mixed success, failure sort of thing. And also you can like extend it if you have a tie, like ramping up the stakes of that while you do 2 out of 3 rock, paper, scissors. I think it's just really is super fun. But no, I love it. I think the thing that's most important for in terms of an actual play space, world building games. World building games. I know they got relatively popular after the McElroys played the Quiet Year on the Adventure Zone. But like there are so many world building games out there that are better for this. The Quiet Year, because Avery Alder is incredibly poignant and emotional and an incredible game designer, is supposed to be ephemeral. The thing you make is supposed to disappear. So the questions in that game are very like deep and emotional and like squishy because they don't matter, because it's about like a community that disappears. So it's like finding the right game to play with your players so they feel invested in the world is hard to do. So I ended up writing a bunch. Honestly, it's just a collection of tables and questions. It's a lot of fun, and then you draw them and then you write them down after a while. It's really fun. So I really, really recommend playing world building games that are pretty light and fun. Either when you're running a session 0, or if you want to like take a break, or if you want to illustrate a world in a different way and make sure everyone has buy-in, you could use any of the ones that I've written. I wrote this package called 3 Short Games to Build Worlds, which was really fun. I really like, I'm sorry, did you say Street Magic? Which is a really good world building game, and also my favorite title in tabletop RPGs, where it's like it kind of like it really like does the good zoom in, zoom out of like cities and towns. But also, yeah, there's a lot of games out there. But yeah, make tables. If I could recommend anything, if you don't want to spend $5 to buy the world building game I wrote, ultimately make a table of 10 questions about a place, and then go around the table and roll a d10, and then everyone gets to contribute, but the person who rolled the die ultimately gets to answer the question.
Okay.
That's it.
I like it. I've heard Microscope is also a really popular one for like world building to plan for a campaign. Like you said, Quiet Year is like very flavorful and specific in its instance, and
Flavorful
it'd
and
be hard to
specific
like
is the
play
perfect
off
way to
of
say
that.
it. Yes,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah. Microscope is great if you like want to set up like millennia of a world from the
Right.
immediately. Well, not even immediately. It's a very big game, but it's incredibly detailed and very, very evocative for something that feels like playing a game of Twilight Imperium.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely going to be different ones for different folks, but I will have to check out your pack there. I know I went and looked through the games that you had on your site, but that sounds like one that would be a lot of fun to play, especially like maybe it's a week where everyone can't show up and you need something to do, that'd be perfect for
Yeah,
it.
and
So,
there's also a
cool.
game in there which is really fun, which is where which actually is supposed to go inside of instead of playing D&D. It's called Bro, You Had to Be There, which is where an unreliable NPC tells a story that your PCs were not there for. And then all of you kind of work together to like piece this event together, which is very, very fun. So it's like, yeah, you should use it as a way to like, again, you're using a game to tell the story, but you don't just have to roll a d20. Like it's the game session. That's what you do. You game.
Welcome to Quickfire Chaos. This week on Quickfire Chaos, Eric and I are going to roll on some random D100 tables from the internet to create a scenario to role play together. So the question comes to you, Eric. Which sounds more interesting to have to make up on the spot, as you are the one making this stuff up? A city quest or a fetch quest?
What, city quest?
Yeah.
What is a
Okay.
city quest?
Stuff that's happening in a town,
Oh,
as
that.
opposed to
Yeah,
like
no, I like
go
that.
get this
That's
MacGuffin.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. City quest it is. All right. So if you will roll the first D100 for me, we'll figure out what little city quest you're gonna have to weave into the mini story here.
Derek, that's a 50, my friend.
The local brewer's latest batch of high-end whiskey has been sabotaged / cursed by Fae. The
Oh,
5
I love
barrels all
this.
sold need to be reclaimed and quickly and quietly, lest the brewer's reputation suffers.
I love
They said less the brewer's reputation suffers, but you and I both know it's less.
I honestly like this, other than the fact that they said the brewer was making whiskey. I'm like, okay, whatever, that's fine.
Touche. Yeah, that's another error we I didn't catch. You're right. Okay. Let's see what this brewer sounds like and kind of acts like. First one is voice description. What you got?
I got a 20 and a 10. I rolled a 0 on my second digit dice 3 times. That's wild.
Always seems to be chewing something. The little Brad Pitt action.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Personality trait. Loudmouthed or gossipy.
Oh, sure.
Up in everyone's business. Okay.
Got it. Got it for sure.
So, in this situation, um, it's been a while since I was just a stereotypical magic user of some sort. I'm gonna be a a magic looking person in some green robes, so pretty ostentatious green robes, like
Okay.
gold embroidery of like flowers and stuff. I'm gonna be a dragonborn this time, just because
Great.
it's been a while since I was a dragonborn too. So I'll be like a bronze dragonborn wearing this crazy green robe and kind of strutting down the street looking pretty self-important, and I'll let you set the scene from here.
You're I guess you got some money in your pocket. You're looking for something to do, and a door opens with warm light and leather and the smell of new leather couches
Hmm.
waft out onto the street, just beckoning you inside. You see the inside, just the warm glow of other leather bound books, and and both beer and whiskey seem to be poured inside. It's a distillery / brewery, with
Hmm.
a real like secret man cave vibe happening inside.
Yeah, seems like a place that is distinguished enough for me. I will go inside to see what is happening.
Yep. The name of this brewery / distillery is the Gold, Silver, and Copper Copper Sill Copper Till. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's both a brewery and a distillery, so it's confusing. Yeah,
The gold, silver, and copper till or
yeah,
still?
because Till something. Yeah, yeah, one of those. Um,
I'm not so good with the common characters. I didn't. Is this letter S or is it silent?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, although inside it's much larger than it seems
Hmm.
from the outdoor that it seems from the street. This brewery / distillery stretches all the way, like kind of all of the way to the other side of the block, both because of the, like as aforementioned, library sort of vibe happening in the front, but also the gold, silver, and copper sills / stills, and the various like whiskey and beer brewing, and beer brewing equipment that's all that goes all the way to the back. Though it is almost a little too quiet in here. There's only a few people around, although you'd think that there were cravats and nice dresses. Really, they've gone all the way down to just little just like 12-year-olds in with overalls and patches on said overalls. You shouldn't be in there. They shouldn't be in there, but they are. They are.
I don't remember how quickly humans age, so I'm not sure if they should be in here or not. Yes. I will go speak to the proprietor of this location and see if there is something to drink.
A bunch of 12-year-olds scatter as you come over. They're also stacked on top of each other wearing a trench coat, so they were in the way. It takes a little while to get out of the way. Sitting on the bar, holding a big sack of sunflower seeds, is a dwarven man, beard all the way down to his feet, both with various braids inside of it, some pleated, some tight knots, some pleats, just a big, I think like a big bell is tied up in it as well. And yeah, he's wearing a three-piece suit, a deep magenta, but it is worn. It is worn at the elbows, and he is just
Mm.
spitting. And on the ground, even before you walk up, it is the crunch of you stepping on the sunflower seeds as you approach the bar.
Nah, he doesn't have a spitting jar. All right, kind of brush my robes off a little bit and approach him and say, "Hello, do you happen to own this establishment? And do you have something that I could drink?"
Yeah, if you're looking, hey, you're not one of my ex-wives or one of the bill collectors, are you? Because then, what's the to you? I wouldn't know about who's the person who runs this side of place. But if you're just looking for a drink, yeah, absolutely. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Barry, gold, silver, and copper sil. Very nice to meet you. Yeah. Oh, you want a snack? You want sunflower seeds? I got all. It's kind of like a mixed bag here. I got original. I got salted. Got extremely unsalted. I had a wizard remove the salt from it. I got dill pickle. I got sweet pickle. I got a half dill pickle. There's spicy, extra spicy. You just kind of got to reach your whole claw in there and just pick one.
I think I will go for the spicy ones. Yes, yeah, I'm gonna grab a mouthful and just shove them straight in and start chewing. I probably don't know that you're supposed to crack them open,
Yeah,
so
make
I
a
think I'm just
constitution save
munching.
for me really quickly. Yeah, just a real
Make it,
constitution save. Yeah,
make
yeah.
a con save. Oh, geez, I don't have any dice. 1 sec.
Got him. Absolutely got him.
Oh. I'm gonna assume I have a +2 to this just because.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I kid you not, natural 20.
Incredible. Great. There's a flavor in these sunflower seeds that you haven't tasted before. But it is
Yeah.
your new favorite flavor. It is all that you want for it. You pick the seeds out of your teeth, and there is one that you lick it and it tastes exactly what it is. What is that flavor?
It is. You listed a bunch of really good ones, but I'm assuming this is not one of those.
It is not one of those, no. That's the only rule.
It is. Ooh.
Can I give you a
I
suggestion?
think of stuff in my fridge. What'd you say?
I'm gonna pimento cheese if you want one as a suggestion. But
Okay.
go over your heart desires.
I'm gonna say it's chocolate.
It's chocolate.
Like coated in chocolate, yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. You wouldn't think that chocolate works in there with the extra spicy pimento cheese in there, but it does. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
This is delicious. Yes.
My friend, it seems like you have good taste in various seeds and other things to put in your mouth. So let's say I can put some other things in your mouth for it as well. Hey, I'm talking about the beer and whiskey that we have here. What are you looking for? What are you buying? What are you drinking?
The whiskey sounds delicious. Do you have something, very old, very aged?
You seem to be a dragon of high quality. Real smart, great dragon. Unfortunately, I can trust you. You pick out the chocolate from the random sunflower seeds bag. I gotta tell you, I would give you some, but seem to be having a little bit of a magical problem as it relates to my higher shelf whiskeys.
Oh dear. I'm gonna look around and maybe lower my voice a little bit. You said this is magic problem.
Yeah, it's
I know a bit about magic, and maybe I can help.
Oh, you sound like one of my ex-wives. Hey, just the third and fifth one. All right. Well, it sounds like you've helped me. Man of high quality here. All right, well, let's see what we can do. He spits out 10 seeds.
Yes, you can trust me, definitely. I can help you with this. What do you know what the problem is?
Yeah. Well, I was talking about. I should have. I think it's unfair. I think it's unfair for me. Honestly, I gotta understand where. Listen. I grew up in a different place in a different time. They did. We were all. When you come from a bunch from everyone has beards, the gender binary is more like a gender mountain that we all live underneath. If you know what I'm saying. So, you
I
know,
think I've heard of this gender mountain. Yes.
yes, it's a gender. Yeah, yeah, your mine inside of the gender mountain, and whatever you pull out, you pull out. It's just what it is. It's all shiny. It all works down there. All right, but I shouldn't have said my ex-wives. It's like it's when you date when you're involved with a consort. Of the fairy court, they don't they kind of exist in the various four seasons of the gender fairy court the four seasons of the gender. I'm not good with words. I'm more of a kind of brewery, distillery kind of guy.
That's okay. So it's a fairy problem.
A very
Um,
fairy problem, a very fairy problem. Yeah, that's what happens.
all
It
right.
does like me
Well, I'll
very
tell you what, friend. I will sit right here on this stool. You tell me all about it, and I will help you recover these barrels, or perhaps help you deal with this fey, so that you can keep making your wonderful drink. Because I must try it if it is anything like these chocolate seeds. I must try. So,
much.
yeah, I'm going to sit here and let's carry on with this.
Yes, absolutely, of course. All right.
That's part of the fun. It's just supposed to be like whatever comes on the, whatever's on the top of your head.
Yeah, for sure.
So you've mentioned already that you have a show called Join the Party, and various other things that have come from creating that podcast. But I'd love to hear about how you got the idea, kind of how it started and how it is going so far.
Yeah, no, Join the Party came about, I think so as I was saying before, the actual play genre really started kicking off as we know it in 2016, 2017, with the popularity of the Adventure Zone. But I'd been spending a lot of time listening to actual plays. I was working at this job. It was like creative adjacent, where we were like I was like it's supposed to be like a podcast discovery program inside of a larger radio company, and then we were like gonna figure it all out. And I was basically we had
Hmm.
editors manually making playlists, and one that I was doing was that I was listening to actual plays, and I was listening to like the first episodes. About I probably listened to like almost 90%, if not more, of all of the podcasts that existed in 2016, 2017 actual play shows. Just like so many of them just tried to like we're just like microphone, middle of the table. Let's start playing some game that we just kind of threw together, right? And
Yeah.
it wasn't intentional at all. And I think at the same time, this was when the Adventure Zone balance was going around, and it was like really the height of its popularity. People were so into this story, but even then, I was like, there are things that other people can do. There was an entire episode about Tom Bodette, who I don't really still understand who it is, and who I don't even understand who that guy is. I'm like, there's a real way with intentionality we can kind of do this, and I'm excited to do it. That's where I met Brandon Grugel, who is one of our players and our editor and sound designer, who's very talented and taught me how to record and edit in the first place. And also, that's where I got to work with Amanda McLaughlin, who is now my wife. But also, like, she had not played D&D before and wanted to get into it, and being like be a cipher or a representation of people who were getting into the game for the first time. Like, kind of starting out with intentionality 2017, and then we've just been like riding the wave of where this has taken us. And I feel like I really care about this creative form and what it means to Dungeons and Dragons, what it means to play, what it means to just like tabletop RPGs at large, what it means to the larger culture, especially as so many things have changed in 2020 and people really started to get into playing TTRPGs, like teaching people how to play, doing it with open arms, telling interesting stories, like really treating it both as a story, as a game, as a story, and as like I wouldn't call it like instructional or educational, but I think that there is a certain amount of like interaction or facilitation that happens because of the actual play that I feel like a lot of shows should feel responsible for. And I feel like that we hit that right from the beginning about like teaching people how to play in the way that I guess I want them to learn how to play, which is like make bold choices, be creative, work together, and play the game as much as possible.
And we talked about it earlier, but the way that you started the show, that intentionality that you mentioned,
Yeah.
definitely sets it apart, and I feel like makes it that much more accessible and more approachable to all kinds of folks. So
Thank you.
it's very cool. Yeah. So you've run games in various different settings since that first episode you recorded. You've done high fantasy, you've done summer camp, you mentioned superhero earlier, um, and your latest campaign is kind of like One Piece, but with like bug and plant people, and it's a fun mashup of a few different things. So yeah, what's it like to create these worlds that are so different? What are some of the common themes that you find while running a show across these very different places? And then what are some of the things you've had to do completely differently for each of the arcs?
I love hearing you say it back to me. I'm like, "Yeah, we did do a lot of weird shit." So, yeah, we really have done a lot of weird stuff. I really like that. Yeah, we definitely have.
Variety's the spice of life.
Truly. It's kind of funny. Each one of these chapters I felt like corresponded with how I felt about actual play and like the game Dungeons and Dragons and like the tabletop RPG community at large. Because like, the
Hmm.
first one, everyone did high fantasy in the beginning. Like it was what you did. You play the game and you use the species that were in the player's manual and then blah blah blah. And then from there you realize the campaign 2, which was a superhero story set in a city that grew out of like a tiny town in upstate New York. Was really about trying to push what the game of Dungeons and Dragons could do. I think this was also around when Dimension 20 started kicking off. It's like, oh, you couldn't really do a lot, and let's really try to see what the bounds were. Playing Monster of the Week, I felt like was when people started realizing you could play actual play with other game systems and seeing what types of stories you could tell not using Dungeons and Dragons. And I think like now is like I'm really trying to bring everything together. What we've been trying to do. We're using a lot of third-party content with Dungeons and Dragons. Like all of our classes are from Valda's Spire of Secrets from Machan Press, which is absolutely incredible. I'm doing a lot of my own game designing now. I came up with like entire alternate species bonuses or traditions, like the countries that each of these characters are from. And also, like I felt like I was throwing myself back into a non-human slash non-real or non like magical realism sort of vibe, like really building a world from scratch. I think that also came from watching Andor, where I'm like, you know what? If we're gonna make Star Wars exciting and energetic again, like maybe I can do it too. So in terms of the common themes, speaking of Andor, it's like I can put some of the feelings that I have about the current world right now. I can put that in there, like a
Hmm.
main theme of all of our stories. I think when you are put in a position of power, whether through elected office or like you create something or you are truly powerful, uh you are truly powerful, what do you do with it? What do you see as your responsibility? Do you help the people around you? Do you make something for yourself? Do you enrich yourself? What do you do with power? I think really that one kicked off in when we were starting the game in 2019, in late 2019. But I think that it took campaign one was all about that as well. Like they weren't heroes; they were thrust into a situation that no one understood because they just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So it was always something I wanted to do. Something more recently, I realized that I didn't know at the time, but like really having gray storytelling where things aren't always black and white or like a hero shows up and saves people was something that was always important to me. And I guess it was always important to me, but I guess I didn't realize how like me being Jewish and caring about that stuff and realizing like my worldview was different from so much other stuff that I was seeing out there. And then I realized like, oh well, I see the world differently. I was raised on different types of stories and have different values. I really need to do this. And that's very important to me to tell the types of stories about where things are where people are conflicted and things don't necessarily end happily, and one person is not right and figures it out. Like it's a lot of that tension, and it's a lot of like people who need defending and trying to figure out how they're going to defend themselves from a majority that subjugates them is always very important to me. And also all my NPCs are Jewish. I'm just allowed. I can just do it. But no, it's something that I get to do because like no one's going to do it for me, so I'm going to do it myself. And of course, I notice from my own study and from my own experience, and also listening to a lot of actual play that like Dungeons and Dragons is deeply rooted in like Christian storytelling and like the Americana Christian melding of church and state. On top
Yeah.
of which, how when Gary Gygax was making Dungeons and Dragons, he like really ripped a lot of monsters from they're different, all different places, mythologies, and I wouldn't say like anglicized them, but like made them work in his world, which was like
Yeah.
had a very defined heaven and hell. He's so into it. He's so into it. He has both devils and demons, which are
I know.
distinct.
That's always been like, what? Why did we do this? It's always been a confusing thing to me, like the point of the separation. I know it's like chaos and law, but like,
But like
I don't know.
that stuff, as someone who like doesn't believe in hell, I'm like, what are you doing? You are so invested in this. And like, the nine
Yeah.
hells are from Dante, and the fact that there are
Hmm.
angels in the first place, and just like the way that he slapped like pantheons that he took from other cultures, and then like really, but still it's like a fantasy world with like some real Jesus vibes, and in various ways, especially from the ways that clerics and especially paladins work. Like
Right.
I'm
Very,
like, oh,
very.
I do need to do this. And like when someone, when like an actual play goes to the nine hells, I'm like, man, I would never do that. I'd never do that in a million years. And I realized that it's something that I really wanted to continue and keep doing.
Hmm. Yeah, I get a lot of Crusader vibes from those class flavors
Hundred
specifically,
percent,
right?
100%.
Yeah, and I think you can play them in a fun way that doesn't rely on those tropes. But funny you're mentioning this. A few guests ago, I had a friend Neil from Ireland on, and he had similar things to say about like how Celtic folklore has just been totally,
Yeah,
I don't know, in the game is just totally different and doesn't really make any sense compared to what he grew up learning about, the stories that he was told about his specific culture's folklore. So it's fascinating. It's like
100%.
an American's view of European folklore. And then there's a bunch of weird other stuff he's done too. So
Yeah, I mean, first
yeah.
of all, shout out to Neil. My favorite thing from Irish folklore is the salmon of knowledge. That's just like a really smart salmon that also like will give you knowledge, give you advice if you catch them, which I just really love the salmon knowledge. One of my favorites, and a
I'll have
big
to ask him
inspiration,
about it.
a very good inspiration in campaign 3. We have a wish granting salmon with like very Dragon Ball vibes, and then in One Piece vibes, like the One Piece is the wish granting salmon. So it was good. But yeah, I mean, it's very similar, I think, to the way that Christians took things and ideas from, and I'm loath to say use the word pagan, but but I do mean it in the actual idea, like a pan Hellenic or a polytheistic religion, and then like
Yeah.
slapped it into their own stuff. Like the idea of Jesus as it related to like the sun is like, I mean, that's pulling from like sun gods and sun mythology from various places. And I mean, like the various devils and demons and all that stuff, like Lilith as like the ex-wife before Eve, and like how she was part of other cultures, and that's where they took him from. And yeah, I think about that when I think about like Bahamut, and or the various
Right.
gods and monsters in Dungeons and Dragons, and like
Like an
how.
actual name of a deity that was worshipped. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
like, very similar to the way that, like, Jesus' birthday was moved, and how, like, Easter is also the spring festival and thing, just, like, stuff like that. Um, it's very similar to how Dungeons& and Dragons was created, and in that same way. So kinda related to the thing that you asked before, like, did you ever start with book stuff? I'm like, "No, I didn't start with it, and I never felt like I wanted to." Like, I never wanted the stuff that was in there because it just never not a first, I realized it wasn't interesting, and it didn't speak to me, but then I'm like, "Oh, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with
Mm.
this at all." And I mean, of course, various people I'm sure has come on this show and have said various things about like, the race science deep within the fantasy world. I wrote an article about like the anti-Semitic like uh issues baked within Dungeons and Dragons in terms of like having Tolkien's dwarves being exactly the same, which Tolkien said were Jews. He like literally said dwarves were Jews. Like, what is a lich but not like keeping a soul inside of like a little Jewish box, you know? So
Yep.
like, there's a lot of stuff in there that is hard for anyone to deal with. But it's like if you don't know, you don't know. And
The
I can even
golems
go
too.
now how he's just like the one that pisses me off the most is how Gary Gygax flattened the golem into just being like a pile of whatever. And now everyone just says golem when they mean like construction, which is literally a word they have, a word in the game, construct. And no one uses it because it's more fun to see the flesh golem and be like, ha ha ha, look, I have a blank golem. There it is. And then like it bothers me so much.
It's interesting to see the worldview he had in the late 60s and early 70s as a Seventh-day Adventist, coming up with this stuff. But you're absolutely right. Like the more you delve into it, the more you realize I could have a lot more fun and be a lot more respectful doing my own thing. So
Yeah, and like,
yeah.
listen, this isn't like, oh my god, go, go get him. He wrote, and the other side is like, well, he was in the 70s. He was just doing whatever. It's like one guy came up with his fantasy world that was so close to Lord of the Rings that the Tolkien estate sued him. Like like he was literally just taking the building blocks of fantasy. I think it's more that like as it related to the large publishing industry and a larger gaming industry of TSR and then Wizards of the Coast, and as it's related to Hasbro, now they're just like pumping it out. And now with the D&D movie, it's IP. So it's like we have Hugh Grant say Neverwinter as many times as possible, but then it's like that's the world where if you're an orc, you're dumb. Like that where and so it's like we're continuing to codify it, especially when people run it kind of like full bore from the book. And that's not their fault. They're tired. They're an adult. They want to just read something out of a book and they don't have time to come up with all the things.
Right.
But then it's like if
It's
you're going to make money off of this and make many of them, and now like whatever they're doing, pushing into IP and whatever's happening with one D&D, like you do have a responsibility to make this for all people. If you're saying no in this imagination game, don't use your imagination. Use the imagination we have provided for you, and that's when it becomes a problem.
I've always kind of erred on the side of homebrewing stuff because it feels more fun to just make it up and try to be creative instead of lean on what other people have done.
Yeah.
But you're right, like it's so easy to just pick up the book and read it and run that game for your friends too. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's an economic problem. It's like, well, if you're gonna
yeah.
make me pay you $30 twice for this and you're telling me I need to, then it's like, you better make this for everyone, even though it's an imagination engine. So it's like it has so many contradictions inside of it making money at this scale, like Wizard of the Coast have done, that now yeah, and then it's like, well, of course people have problems with it. You told them to look at it and use it. So it's like, well, if you have a problem and you say, do whatever you want with race, I don't know. Then like, well, you really are. Then so I shouldn't use my imagination. I should like what? I don't understand what you're trying to tell me to do. So I think it's just it gets complicated when they're using this as such like a money machine,
Yeah, there's
especially
been a
now
lot of dissonance.
with the IP creation, as I've said.
Yeah. There's been a lot of dissonance with the them revamping the game too, right? Whether or not they're going to and the changes they're going to make and then they don't or whatever else. But anyway, so you talked earlier about how starting this show led to the creation of Multitude.
Yes.
So tell us what Multitude is and how or what it's been like to work with so many different shows and help so many other folks kind of get into creating content like this.
Absolutely. Well, my job, I am the head of creative at Multitude, which is a podcast collective studio and ad sales provider, which means that we are a collective of podcasts. We're a bunch of podcasts that work together. We have like a shared Slack and we tour together and we like talk about each other and we make fun stuff together. And also we are a studio, so we make shows for other people. We've made shows for Sony Music and for Netflix, and we currently make shows. We help produce like a show like Unladylike, or we work with Defector, which is like a sports worker owned website that used to be Deadspin, if you remember that happening a little while
Oh
ago.
yeah.
Yeah, so I produce their sports show, which is very fun to distraction. And also we sell ads for people. I think that people don't know that like what a network is really just like a top down power where in exchange for selling your ads, a network like gets a piece of your IP or tells you what to do or tells you how to make money in a specific way. And we just don't believe in that. We think that that doesn't make any sense. So we sell ads for you, kind of just like straightforward. Like we sell your ads,
Mm.
we take a cut. That's it. Multitude enables 25 people to make a living from their podcasts, which are our employees at Multitude, the company, our hosts, and our ad sales clients. And we're always adding to that number. It's a lot of fun, and I can't believe that I get to do it full time. I love podcasts. I think podcasts are great. I think they're smart. I think they're fun, they kind of like are with you all the time. I said like podcast listeners are super sticky, and they love what they love. They love like the podcast, and they love the connections that they have with the hosts, and it kind of fits into your adult life. Like I'm doing something and I'm also listening to something and I have some company. So I just really love making podcasts. Podcasting has really fit into the larger digital creation sphere, in that like it's relatively new, so like the newer the thing, the more of a speed run it has through the content machine of like the people investing a bunch of money into it and then everyone getting laid off and the boom and the bust and everything, similar to actual play at large, but it's just happened so quickly as opposed to like YouTube and streaming and blogging. But I mean, we love it. We love making shows for other people. I love that this is my job. Like I get to like help people make shows. I get to make shows as that will like hopefully be sticky and people can fall in love with. All Multitude shows are like conversational podcasts where passionate people create shows that you can count on. We come out when we say they're going to come out, so that because we become part of your life, and then we like as we said, we accept you with open arms, and podcasts become beacons for people of like-minded people to assemble around. So it's like it's our responsibility to like put the show out so that you can congregate around it and find people who love the similar things and in a similar way that you do. It's great. I think I've been thinking about a lot, especially in where actual play is right now, of like the LAification of the space, where like everyone is trying to like go to Los Angeles, get famous actors to play something closer to long form improv and like go to a set and have crazy cameras and have lights, and it becomes like a production. Now, I'm not saying that shouldn't exist. Like Dimension 20 has like 60 people working on it. Critical Role has so many people working on it. Not another D&D podcast went to Carnegie Hall. Like I get it. It's a big production, but not everything needs to be that. That should not be the current mode in which we are striving to, like looking to traditional power structures within media to tell us that we're successful, right? Like that shouldn't be it. We are a digital product. You could be anywhere and have a good microphone and put the time in and be intentional and edit and and mix and make your audio sound good, and like then you can just put it out. So I urge people to do the thing that they want to do in the place they want to do it, because it's a digital product. You need the least number of people listening to your show to do this full time than ever. In the way that like Patreon works, listeners understand that they have to pay money to the people they like, which is something that happened after 2020, which I'm eternally grateful for. Their listeners are so smart. They know you all know what to do. And it's never been easier to like take control and run a business, a creative business for yourself. And still like not kill yourself, not like run yourself into the ground and burn out, you know?
Yeah.
So it's never been easier. I just don't want anyone, and I'm seeing this in podcasting, and I'm seeing this in the actual play space at large. And of course, like this happened to YouTube and this happened to bloggers, but like we don't have to look to traditional media to do it. We can do it ourselves. And Multitude is doing it. We have a studio in Brooklyn that we've had since 2019. We've been doing this since 2017. We're going strong, and I think that you can do it. And I urge people to like give it a shot and do make the thing that makes them unique, because people will find them and congregate around it.
So, what is the future then of Join the Party? I know you're in the middle of your third kind of full story arc here. Do
Yeah.
you have a plan for a fourth one, or any other kind of ideas or plans that you can share with us?
I mean, I want to keep doing it for as long as people want to listen, for sure. I assume there's going to be a fourth campaign. I just don't even
Hmm.
know. Like, I feel like we put so much energy into the world of Vertistello and doing this like pirate plant bug people thing and like finding the wish granting salmon and all this stuff. It's been so much fun to do. And like, we're like 25 episodes in, and I'm like, we have a lot more to go. We are telling a story. I'm excited to tell like a pirate epic. I was excited to do a mini campaign for Monster of the Week, but like that felt like 20 episodes. But now it's like,
Uh-huh.
let's really live in this place. Yeah, I don't know, but I think that that's going to come down to like what happens to actual play in tabletop RPGs. I mean, I under I am loath to like keep referring to D&D like this, but like what happens to D&D is going to really change a lot of stuff. Like how much different is one D&D going to be to 5th edition? What are people going to make games in after this? I don't know. What if 1 D&D is everything people are worried about? Like what if it turns into like real like Overwatch 2, you know? It might. We were worried about it, especially with the OGL happening at the beginning of this year. There's still a lot of questions about if because 5th edition became the great unifier, and I wonder if they end up doing 6th edition or 1 D&D, whatever they're calling it. Well, I wonder if it's going to fracture, but also many more people like other games. So I think that it's less of a scary proposition to play a different game. It's just like D&D seems to be the most flexible thing, because the only thing that really unifies it is like action and fighting. Like you're telling an action story, but can really be so many different action stories. In
Uh-huh.
smaller in other tabletop RPGs, it really is form following function, which is why I love it. But it's like if you're going to play Masks, you have to play a game, you have to tell a story about teenage superheroes. You
Hmm.
cannot tell anything else. If you're going to play Monster of the Week, you do need to make this feel like it is a procedural, a spooky supernatural procedural. You can't tell any other story. And I realize that those are both powered by the Apocalypse games, and
Right.
I'm not getting the full breadth of everything, but like games are good because they tell specific stories, and the domination of Dungeons and Dragons for how flexible it is, especially 5th edition, I think is what kind of built the actual play genre in the first place. And then we'll see if like critical roles or critical roles games are going to be good, or like if people end up making those like D20 systems that they said they were making when the OSR was when the OGL was threatened. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that it doesn't keep me up. But like whenever I think about it, it's always like, what like there's a lot of change that's coming, but I don't know what kind of change it's going to be. So,
Yeah,
yep, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. If you're listening to this way in the future and it already has played out, then I guess
there
you
you
know
go.
more than we do. Yeah. All right. I would love to hear, to wrap things up here, Eric, your words of wisdom and encouragement to, number one, folks who are trying to be creative out there and maybe are wanting to make something or are currently making something. And then your advice for the DMs and GMs out there as well.
Absolutely. If you are someone working in the creative space, if you are a digital creator, or it doesn't have to be digital, if you're working on art, remember that the thing that people like, the reason why they're giving you money in exchange for art, is your unique take on whatever genre you're a part of. When platforms or companies or whatever come to you and offer you something and say they're like the panacea, or they want your thing, or they want to put you on the platform in exchange for something, like they think that they are special, and they're just by existing, they are the special thing. By putting you on their platform, they are special. No, you are the one who's special, and you should value your worth, especially when you are dealing with the exchange of your art for money. Remember, you're the most valuable thing. And the worst thing that a platform can do is underestimate it, because then you're going to have a problem. YouTube, Twitch, Wizard of the Coast, like you're going to have a problem. So you're special and you got it. For the DMs out there, for the DMs and the GMs out there, the first thing I would say is it's not that hard. I know that like you really, really love the way that the people you watch and listen to in actual plays do, but like you can do a good job if you just like think about it for an hour and then like write some stuff down. I promise your friends are going to have a good time. Just try it, just do it. My second piece of advice is you should think about running a game like playing a card game where you have a hand, right? Whether you're playing poker or Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh, where you have a hand of cards. And you can play those cards in any order. Those are your notes. But no one else knows what cards you have until you play them. So if you need to move something around, or you got to do something in some order, or you got to put an NPC who was in the beginning and put them at the end, or if they die, if one of the NPCs dies and it doesn't make any sense, well, throw the card away. They don't know. They don't need to know what's in your hand until you play them. I think that's the thing that we've learned from the theater kids out there, or if you're a summer camp counselor or a babysitter, or you have kids, or anytime that you entertain for someone else. You want to keep the energy up and then make sure everyone's having fun and never let them see you sweat. Not because they're going to own you or because you can't let them, they're scary wolves. It's because you got to make sure everyone knows they're just here to have fun. It's not that big of a deal. You got it.
Excellent. All right. To the last but not least, I'd love to know where folks can find you, can find your work, can find stuff that you've written, stuff that you've designed and created, all that good stuff.
You can find me on Twitter at L_Silvero, EL_SALVERO. That is my name. If I'm a Lucha Libre wrestler, I'm going to be there until they turn the lights off. No idiot, no weird guy is going to push me off of the thing that I love. I'm staying to Twitter till the end. I have a TikTok as well that I've been having fun just posting stuff on, Eric the Silver, where you can hear stuff because I'm the best DM in podcasting. And if you want to find my work, just go to listen to Join the Party. Join the Party is wherever actual plays are found. We're currently, as you said, doing a world of plant and bug people and pirates, and it is a whole lot of fun. And then you can find my stuff. Yeah, I sell the games that I write. It's most of the time in the Join the Party merch store, but I also have an itch. I think I'm ericsilver.itch.io, where I have the game Clear Eyes Full Hearts that I made with Misha Stanton. So it's a GM-less game if you want to play like a Friday Night Lights or a sports anime drama story. It's a lot of fun. GM-less games are the best, man. They're the absolute best. But I'm gonna give Derek a bunch of links so you can play like three short games. You can find that stuff in the episode description.
So fun to chat with you. Had a great time. Love your perspectives. And I think the folks out there are going to really enjoy it too.